that is profound. That is completely profound. Welcome back, Derek Hagan here. I see the world through meaning in life. I'm a certified meaning and purpose practitioner. If that means anything to you, it probably doesn't. All that means is that I see the world through the lens of meaningful living, meaning and valued living. So on this channel, we take a look at songs and poetry and other things through the lens of meaningful living. And meaningful living is not just about happiness, but it is about happiness, but it's also about the downside of life. We're talking about resilience. We're talking about anti-fragility, personal values, mindsets, purpose, mindfulness. I think I already said that. So, I'm repeating myself. In my professional life, I work as a financial therapist and financial psychology expert, exploring money's role in a meaningful life. So you can check that out at meaning.blog if you want to. Okay, so I checked out Life is Funny, and I got a little giddy over it because it was exactly up my alley. I love that exact kind of song. And to hear it from Ren was even like icing on top of that already delicious cake. And somebody commented, there's this poem you got to check out called Meaning, and link to it. Now the link brought me to a poem by Ren called Trick the Fox. At least that's what it's called now. It looks pretty old because he's very young. I hope this is the right one, but I'm going to check out Trick the Fox by Ren. So let's get it. If you're new here, I go through once. It's not very long. I go through once and just check it out, just listen to it, see how it feels, see how it hits me. And then I go through a second time with a little bit of commentary, see if there's anything we can learn, see if there's any questions that it brings up, and just kind of see what happens. So let's get it. Trick the Fox.
I wrote a poem last year.
He's so young.
I never do poems, so I'm going to do a poem over some guitar chords. The meaning of this life can change. It's just how you observe it. Like you can't stop a wave, but you can learn to surf it, so it's all down to interpretation. Remember, one man changed the laws of physics with a 3-letter equation, and so I take this principle and I apply that to life. For every moment's an opportunity dressed in a different disguise. To be aware of our potential, that is to open our eyes. The only force that works against us is the ticking of time, but I accept mine. I stare death in the face, I take hold of his bony fingers, I hold death in embrace, for to accept death is to be free from fear, and we can fill the gap with love, and time just seems to disappear. For what is the use working a 9-to-5 job, trying to build some sort of status for ourselves before our time is up, if when we get there we feel the same as we did from the start? Material wealth will never quench a thirsty heart. We spend so much time searching for the meaning of our existence that sometimes we forget to just exist through sheer persistence. Buddhist monks will spend years in deep meditation, and saints will contemplate God and all of his creations. Scientists will try to summarise with an equation. Consumerists will try to buy the ticket to salvation. Well, this is my theory. This is my school of thought. The meaning of life is much easier than once thought. You want to know what it is? Yeah? Well, my theory is the meaning of life, it is to simply live. And if I am wrong, then Lord please forgive, but it seems so simple, it's obvious, it makes me want to shout out that the meaning of life is this second, this moment, right here, right now.
Holy shit! Oh my god! Are you kidding me? It was a minute and a half of absolute truth bombs. Every single fucking word. And he was so young when he said that. Boom! That is profound. That is completely profound. So we need to check this out again. So I gotta get to this again, man. That was I'm not going to be able to add a lot to this because you've heard me talk before about confirmation bias. That is seeking out opinions that already match your own opinions. He's just giving me spoonfuls of confirmation bias here. He's open up. Here comes another shot of what you already believe. But I think this is important. I think this is profound. So let's see what he's talking about.
I wrote a poem last year, and I never do poems, so I'm going to do a poem over some guitar chords.
So we're going to read his poem on top of his guitar chords.
The meaning of this life can change.
Already. What meaning do you assign to life? What meaning do you assign to your relationships? What meaning do you assign to money? Do you play the money game or do you play your own game? So already he's hitting us right over the head with, encouraging us to open our eyes.
It's just how you observe it.
It's just how you observe it. So your perspective matters. What you pay attention to becomes what your life is. If you're only focused on the negative of everything around you, your life is going to seem worse than if you can cultivate a sense of gratitude and awe. That doesn't mean that you ignore the bad stuff. It just means that you're seeing a broader perspective.
The meaning of this life can change. It's just how you observe it. Like you can't stop a wave, but you can learn to surf it. So
I don't know. I think, I forgot all the words, but I think that's my favorite line. You can't stop a wave, but you can learn to surf it. That's a meditation on, this is all my interpretation. I'm, of course, not mind reading. I don't know exactly what he's thinking. But so when I say he's saying this, please know that means my interpretation of what he's saying is that we exist, and part of existence is to experience the human condition. And the human condition is that stuff's going to happen. Shit's going to happen. That is literally baked into what it means to be a human. And you can't change that. Like waves will knock you around, but you can also learn to surf. So you can learn to handle life's adversities, life's setbacks, life's obstacles. And he didn't necessarily say this, but expectations matter. If I expect nothing, if I expect calm, if I expect there to be no waves, boy, am I going to be disappointed and ill-prepared to deal with that wave. But if I know there's going to be waves, not only does that change my perspective, because, well, I guess he did say it earlier, that's what you pay attention to, then not only do I expect the waves, so it doesn't catch me by surprise, but I can actually take advantage of it. So almost like in the world of resilience or trauma, there's this sense that a traumatic event, it doesn't need to be trauma. I'm not talking about big capital T trauma events, although that would fall underneath this umbrella. I'm talking about just everyday stress, everyday things that happen, all the way from stubbing my toe all the way up to I got fired today, bigger things, smaller things. If those break us, then we're in post-traumatic stress. Like we haven't bounced back yet. If we bounce back, now we're being resilient. So resilience is a kind of a sign for how quickly can you get back to how you were before the setback. And then if you grow from it, now that's post-traumatic growth. A different way to view this is through fragility. There are substances that if you stress them, they shatter. That's fragile. And so resilience is if you stress it, maybe like a stress ball, you squish it and it can get back to normal. But what about those things that are anti-fragile, that when you stress it, it actually gets stronger? Trees in the biodome. In the biodome, they first learned that they were floppy trees because there was no wind in the biodome. There was no stress to hit and push the trees around, so they never had to develop any rigidity. Right? So a tree is anti-fragile. It gets stronger because of adversity. So anyway, learning to deal and ride the waves is like being anti-fragile. It's taking the wind and turning myself into a sturdy trunk.
It's just how you observe it. Like you can't stop a wave, but you can learn to surf it, so it's all down to interpretation. Remember, one man changed the laws of physics with a 3-letter equation, and so I take this principle...
Einstein shout out, changed the world of physics, E equals mc squared. Now, we don't need to talk about the profound nature of that equation, mass, and c is the speed of light, which is a constant, and you're squaring the speed of light, or the speed of light. I mean, elegantly simple, but it did change the world.
Remember, one man changed the laws of physics with a 3-letter equation, and so I take this principle and I apply that to life. For every moment's an opportunity dressed in a different disguise. To be aware of our potential, that is to open our eyes. The only force that works against us is the ticking of time. But
so here, this is where the existentialists come into play. What does existence mean? And existence is finite, so time works against us. Our time is limited. That's the only thing working against us, because you can spot opportunity in every struggle. And I forget to whom to attribute this quote, but it's something to the effect of a pessimist sees tragedy in every opportunity, and an optimist sees opportunity in every tragedy. It's kind of a funny quote, and that's got kind of picked up here.
But I accept mine. I stare death in the face, I take hold of his bony fingers, I hold death and embrace, for to accept death is to be free from fear and weak.
Accepting death. I mean, I think I talked about this at length, and probably why this poem was recommended to me. The fear of death has a stranglehold over us. Humans are the only species, as far as we know, we can't necessarily communicate with other species, but we're the only species that can go forward and backwards in time in our mind. We can remember the past, like consciously, not subconsciously. Of course, everything that we've seen builds into our subconscious, but I'm talking, I can reminisce, I can experience nostalgia, but I can also plan for the future. That's something that other animals can't do. And that's where we get lost. When we're stuck in the past, we might call it ruminating, or we might call it depression. And from stuck in the future, I might call it anxiety or excessive worry. But if I look far enough out in the future, what do I see? I see death. And now, holy shit, now I'm scared. And I've talked about this at length before. There's a book called The Denial of Death that you might be interested to check out if this is kind of interesting to you. Ernest Becker makes the claim that everything that humans have done and will do, is to alleviate the fear of death. Every religion on earth was created to give ourselves an immortality story. Either it's an afterlife or it's a reincarnation. Modern versions of this are freezing ourselves and uploading our consciousness to a computer. We don't want to admit that we're going to die. That scares the shit out of us. But facing that, memento mori, some cultures have a saying, you are going to die, or just remember you're going to die. They keep skulls around as a remembrance to remind themselves that they will die. So these kinds of tactics of remembering life is finite, it doesn't need to be as morose as it seems, because it reminds us to pay attention to the things that really matter while we can, because it's not just me that's going to die, it's everybody else that I know that's going to die. And those they're not going to be at the same time. So even if I live for 50 more years, my loved ones might not. And so it's a call to not take this life for granted.
Hold of his bony fingers, I hold death and embrace, for to accept death is to be free from fear, and we can fill the gap with love, and time just seems to disappear.
Yes.
For what is the use working a 9-to-5 job, trying to build some sort of status for ourselves before our time is up?
Listen.
For what is the use working a 9-to-5 job, trying to build some sort of status for ourselves before our time is up?
That's my point. I talked about this in Money Game 1, maybe in both of them. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm very new to Ren, and there's a lot of you who are like part of the Renaissance and what's the other word that starts with Ren? Renaissance, renegade. You're renegades. Interestingly, right now in Minnesota, the Ren Fest is going on, and I'm in the middle of my own Ren Fest. But so when I make these connections, I might get them wrong. I've been wrong before. I was wrong about Sick Boy. I thought that was more a philosophical tale about things that could apply to everybody, and in fact it seemed to be like his actual personal tale. So I was completely way off base there. So I'm admitting that I can be wrong. So when I say, let's hear it again, actually.
But what is the use working a 9-to-5 job, trying to build some sort of status for ourselves before our time is up?
That's the money game. My interpretation of this is that's the money game that becomes our default path. What do we think we're supposed to do? Play this money game, try to get some status, try to work this job, try to get the house on the cul-de-sac with the 2 cars, and then I got to send these kids to these schools, and then I got to do this, and I have to have those vacations, and I have to wear these clothes, and I have to do all this, and I have to do all that. Why? So that my neighbors, the Joneses, can be proud of me, so that I can get some likes on social media? When people have near-death experiences, they tend to change their life because that's when they realize, okay, I can't hide from this anymore. I need to start focusing on the real things, and they quit their corporate job and they become, some artist or some hobby job or some different job that they actually enjoy doing because, first of all, I don't need all that money. What's the point of having all that money? It just made me insecure and comparing to everybody else. So you don't have to play the money game.
If when we get there, we feel the same as we did from the start.
And that's even more profound. If you win the money game, you don't even win the money game. And I have a mentor of mine who's known for saying, this is a shitty game we're playing if the winners don't even feel happy. So if you win the money game, you're done. Because material wealth isn't true wealth. It's not. Nobody gets to the end of their life and wishes they spent more time with their money. You can't take it with you. The person who dies with the most jelly beans dies, like the rest of us. Scrooge McDuck with this gigantic building full of money. What's the point? Ebenezer Scrooge. What was his point in Christmas Carol?
Or a status for ourselves before our time is up. If when we get there, we feel the same as we did from the start. Material wealth will never quench a thirsty heart. We spend so much time searching for the meaning of our existence that sometimes we forget to just exist through sheer persistence.
Also profound. And I imagine this Ren seems very well read. If he's not well read, he is very intuitive. My story I tell myself is he's both. This is a shout out, it sounds to me, to Viktor Frankl, a guy who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a 4-time Holocaust survivor. He was snatched up by the Nazis in World War II, and he had to spend time in 4 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And he came out of that and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And his point, one of his points, in the whole branch of philosophy, kind of a child or cousin, but a philosophy related to existential psychology. He called it logotherapy, which is meaning therapy, trying to find meaning in life. That's a human's main purpose, is to find meaning in life. That's what logotherapy is about, and that's Viktor Frankl's invention, or that's what he brought to the table. His point is, you cannot pursue meaning. Meaning must only ensue from your activities. So the more you chase after meaning, the less meaning you're going to experience. He says, and this has been researched, it's the same thing for happiness. The more I try to be happy, the more I'm not going to be happy, instead of just doing the things that will make me happy. Pursuing meaning, pursuing happiness is like trying to grab a bar of soap in the bathtub. The harder you reach for it, the more it's going to slip through your fingers. And where he's going next is a mindfulness play. We spend so much time figuring out what's the point of all this, that I fail to actually just be in the present moment. The present is all you have. Remember, the past only exists as a thought, as a memory. And the future only exists as a thought, as anticipation. The present is literally the only thing that you have. Pay attention.
So much time searching for the meaning of our existence that sometimes we forget to just exist through sheer persistence. Buddhist monks will spend years in deep meditation, and saints will contemplate God and all of his creations. Scientists will try to summarize with an equation. Consumerists will try to buy the ticket to salvation.
Exactly. And I love that he actually called it out for consumerist, because consumerism often gets synonymized? Is this a word? To be made a synonym with? If it's not a word, I'm going to start using it. Synonymized with capitalism. So capitalism, at its core, is an economy where private ownership of goods and your work. So private ownership and voluntary exchange. So I am not being forced to trade with anybody. I'm not being forced to go to work. I'm not being forced to do any particular work. I'm not being forced to sell anything. I'm not being forced to buy anything. It's all driven by voluntary exchange. Now, consumerism, that's where you get the manipulation. Consumerism is, it's exactly what he said. It is trying to buy happiness. It's marketers telling us, and they hit really hard on this in Fight Club, anti-consumerism movie. And interestingly, Fight Club, I brought that up in my high Ren video when the inner critic, side said, you got to kill you if you got to kill me. Well, that's Fight Club. I don't want to give it away. I can give it away. It's like a 20-year-old movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm not giving any spoilers away. But you find out the big reveal at the end of the movie is that these two characters were not actually two characters. They're actually one person. And in order to get rid of the Tyler Durden, the Brad Pitt character, he has to actually kill himself or shoot himself in order to get rid of the other character. But anyway, Fight Club is an anti-consumerism movie. It has some tie-ins with higher end. But consumerists, the more you make material wealth your goal, I mean, that's even worse than trying to pursue meaning or happiness. Or it's a subset of that. It's trying to find meaning by using money. Or trying to find happiness by using money to buy stuff or to buy status. But those are the things that don't matter because those are extrinsic values. Those are values that I only care about insofar as I can tell you about it. If I was by myself, if I was on an island, if I couldn't tell anybody that I valued these things, would I still value them? That's the true test for, is this an intrinsic value, something I feel here, and an extrinsic value, which is something I'm only doing because I think I'm supposed to. Super profound stuff by really young Ren here.
Well, this is my theory. This is my school of thought. The meaning of life is much easier than once thought. You want to know what it is? Yeah? Well, my theory is the meaning of life, it is to simply live. And if...
There's a famous quote attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe, but I'm sure it has roots further back than her. The meaning of life is to live it. Simple. That's exactly what he said. Well-read Ren.
If I am wrong, then Lord please forgive, but it seems so simple, it's obvious, it makes me want to shout out that the meaning of life is this second, this moment, right
Present.
here, right now.
100%. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me. This is 22 minutes talking about a 1.5 minute video. So if you're still here, welcome. You're my people. But let me know what spoke to you. Let me know how this hit you differently. What was your interpretation of it? And what else should I check out? I'll see you next time.